competitive history debuts another ninja to the series. This one, a true fan favourite, a character that has taken many forms across the games with lore, visuals or game plan, but remains to this day one of the franchise's most beloved fighters. I'm talking of course about Ermac. Making his debut in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but as always having rumour-based secret roots in previous games, once the gameplay was out there and he was a standalone character, nothing could take away from the impact that he made to many MK fans around the globe. And from the 90s to the 3D era to the modern era, Ermac has always been around in some form. Welcome to the competitive history of Ermac. As always, it makes sense that we start at the beginning for this one. Vanilla Mortal Kombat 3 had only unmasked Sub-Zero as the game's ninja character, if you don't count the cyborgs, that is. It was the release of Ultimate MK3 that added a ton of them, with the 16-bit ports of Ultimate MK3 adding even more with Rain and Noob Saibot. One of those ninjas was Ermac, who, in the competitive space, made quite the splash as one of the game's most dangerous characters at that level. He was one of the game's hidden characters that required a special combat code to unlock, and it required both players to input. Just get a game over, and when the countdown ends, you have a chance to input the code. That's often the easiest way for many to reach the code screen.
That's Ermac.
Outstanding.
Move-wise, he was dead simple. A basic fireball that served as a full screen option, sometimes a combo ender. Nothing special really, but it is nice having that as an option. Scorpion's teleport is given to Ermac, and it is a great mobility tool, combo tool, defensive or offensive. It complements him extremely well because of another move, and definitely his most famous one. Teleslam has impressive range, fast startup, and it pops up for a combo on hit. This move is, without a doubt, one of Ultimate MK3's strongest attacks because of its insane versatility. It gives Ermac incredible combo potential, but also major punishes, anti-airs, air-to-airs, the threat of it in neutral, although it's definitely unsafe. Basically, this move did everything that you wanted an attack to do as an offensive option. Ermac's strings were mega simple. This 4-hit from a Kickstarter. These strings that start from a typical high punch, they're all fine, but realistically, you almost never used these unless you wanted to keep a corner positioning or something, because of his deadliest string, which was a simple 2-hit. This launching string, combined with everything else, made Ermac the animal that he is in Ultimate MK3. The run jab, meta, and kick starters often being the most dangerous for beating your defensive poking, and the fact that he gets insane damage off of his because of teleport, the slam, the male ninja buttons in general. He was without question one of the heaviest hitting characters in the entire game, and has always been a favourite of many high-level Ultimate MK3 players due to his damage, pressure, mobility, conversions. You'd be hard-pressed to find something that Ermac doesn't do well in the competitive meta. He's often sitting around the top 5 or top 3 in the tier lists, and he's always been set as top tier because, I mean, he is. Ermac in Ultimate is absolutely one of the best characters in the entire game. It's worth mentioning though that although Ermac changes a little bit in Trilogy, for definitely the Nintendo 64 version, those changes aren't Ermac specific, if we're talking about stuff like teleport cooldowns for instance. So for his teleport differences in that game, I actually suggest watching my MK Meta for Trilogy, as it is all covered there. He basically just got more teleport options, as the teleport was able to be used a lot more often. Ermac was still, at his core, the same design in Trilogy, so I don't need to cover it. Ermac made his debut in 1995. For his next installment, we skip over a fair few MK titles. because it wasn't until 2004 that Mortal Kombat Deception would release and feature Ermac as one of the game's base characters, not needing to be unlocked in the crypt or anything. I remember as a kid only being interested in Ermac because Deadly Alliance didn't have any characters that I was into, and Ermac was quite the favourite of mine from PlayStation Trilogy. I was so excited to use him again, and not needing to figure out how to unlock him was even better. Deception had a ton of characters to unlock, so just putting it in a new system and playing it on its own was a bit of a nightmare. There were so many characters that weren't unlocked. By the way, this is the first time I've ever covered competitive Deception on the channel, so very excited for that, and thank you for those that spoke to me about the high-level side of this game, as it's always been a tricky one to research in the past. MK Deception Ermac was actually pretty different to his Armageddon version, so we'll cover both games one at a time. MK Deception sported two different hand-to-hand stances, which was common in this game, but there are so many moves, and a bunch that you probably won't use too much, that I'm mostly going to cover general game plan and key buttons here to prevent a total information overload. Special move-wise, a lot of his classic moves return, Fireball and Teleslam being those two classic moves, but with new specials. He has a telekinetic throw, and an airborne state that can go into either dive kick or unblockable ground pound. This is the game that move comes from, if you've only played him in MKX or something. His hand-to-hand stances were Hua Xuan and Choi Li Fu. Hua Xuan had a really neat launcher in 2-back-1, which recovered pretty damn quickly, on top of some long-range pokes in down 3 and down 1. Important mids were quite a factor in Deception, and Ermac, although he didn't have many, Hua Xuan's standing 1 was a pretty decent mid, and it's kind of one of the main things you'd use in this stance. It's a simple stance, but as Choi Li Fu makes up for it in what is definitely his more superior movement stance. I'm talking forwards, backwards, sidestep movement, it is all incredibly good. Choi Li Fu has a pivotal down 1 because it has fantastic recovery if you backdash cancel, a popular strategy in Deception where you basically backdash after a move comes out. It keeps you a lot safer, and remember, this stance has good movement anyway for that hit and run style. 1-1-2 is another main string in this stance if we're talking combos, as 1-1-2 stance change does insane damage on its own, and the 1-1-2 in juggles can actually lead into more juggles, combo enders. It's all in all a pretty damn good string for damage. His weapon stance is an axe. Nothing fancy about this, just good damage and decent range, with the main string being 1-3-4-4-4. This string, you can stagger the final few hits to stay a little bit more unpredictable, but it is the standalone damage that's good here. 1-3-4 does 20% on its own. However, the main thing about Axe is the unbreakable damage it grants Ermac, and it is one of his best tools in the entire game. Axe down 2 is a launcher that combos into lift. It has got a limit on it, so you can't just infinite down 2 and launch repeatedly. But the thing is, the down 2 in Axe stance is, for some reason, unbreakable. So is the slam, and so is the telekinetic fling. Put all of these together, and you get some pretty insane unbreakable damage. Deception Ermac was a very poke-heavy character thanks to his low pokes, particularly buttons like Choi Li Fu's down 1. At the same time, his standing 1 was an important pressure tool because of the grab situations that come after it. He was also a major whiff punisher, as one slam leads to big damage, and if you have Axe equipped, unbreakable damage. You can swap stance mid-combo, but it does change timings a bit as you have to equip it as you change around, and it can be a little bit tricky, but it's definitely possible to swap stances mid-combo. The slam itself has a really fast startup, so a raw slam is a rapid punisher against most moves. Ermac isn't really tricky in this game, but if you get a good feel for his pokes, and you get really good at whiff punishing with the slam, you're off to a good start. On the tier list, he's always been commonly agreed as a kind of mid-tier character, because as always in 3D MK, it's not quite enough to hang with the top tiers, because the top tiers in this game, like Bo' Rai Cho or Dairu, were absolutely busted. Although, due to some of his attacks, like Choi Li Fu standing 1 having that throw situation, if his grab launched and didn't knock down, he would have been way higher on that tier list. Armageddon changes things up quite a bit for Ermac, honestly. His Hua Xuan is removed and it's given to Striker, but his Choi Li Fu stance remains, which in my opinion was always the preferred stance for me growing up because of the combo potential and just general buttons. They felt a lot better as a kid. A change he receives in this game is a slower recovering hand-to-hand down 1. Still a good poke, but not quite what it was in Deception. But the unbreakable down 2 from Axe remains, which means he can keep those down 2 slam loops in check, although they're a lot harder in Armageddon as the combo just hits them differently. You can't get so many loops as easily, so sometimes you might need to cut it short. That isn't a complete disaster though, because if we're talking Armageddon, we're talking the parry, which was a huge tool in this game. His weapon 13444 has a parryable gap in it, which obviously wouldn't have existed in Deception. But the parry system in general helps Ermac because of the parry cancel combo routes. I covered the parry cancel in my Armageddon MK meta, but it basically involves doing a parry and at the correct time pressing another button to cancel the parry, but you keep the slight advancing movement. Ermac's hand-to-hand 1-1 is an incredible parry cancel combo tool, and it means that you can launch and parry cancel a bunch of your 1-1s for a lot more damage. He gets true 50% combos at least from this, and although they're tricky, it's definitely a big impact for Ermac as a lot of characters can't realistically use parry cancels mid-combo because of the weird and awkward extended combo system that Armageddon has. So many combos being costume specific, character specific, whether you're facing away or towards, there's a lot of things that can get in the way, and Ermac's cancels in the parry are actually pretty consistent. His tier list position remains the same as his core tools didn't really change, but his access to damage in different ways did. I like him in Armageddon a lot more because although he does have the air combo infinite routes, if people choose to not use them or just take them out, which is a common community rule, Ermac still gets some of the most enjoyable combos in the game without them. So a big thumbs up for me and a huge personal favourite of mine in these games, right up there with my other favourite picks. So now, we enter the point in time where I think Ermac really took an extreme change in terms of gameplay. Mortal Kombat 9. Reviving the franchise, basically, and somewhat reimagining how some characters play in a return to 2D style gameplay. Ermac came in with a look really staying true to his 3D image, but taking it a little bit further still. He had many returning moves, but they would often function a bit differently. The projectile is back, with the meter burn version of this doing more damage and hitting mid. It has an air version, which is a close-ranged angled blast. You probably recognise this from MKX, don't you? Teleport comes back as it's 2D, but this one has the same startup animation as the projectile, so there's a bit of kind of built-in trickiness here. Enhance it to launch the opponent and pick up combos. There is a trick here that teleport in the air has faster startup, so instant air teleport to beat projectiles is a very viable strategy, a common feature in MK9. The hover and slam comes back from 3D. The ground pound returns, but you can also cancel, teleport, or air blast from it. Not a move that you'd see all the time, honestly, but it can be a cheeky little round ender if you're feeling brave. Ermac's most iconic move, the lift, comes back. It launches for a full combo and on enhanced, hits twice. This is your absolute main combo tool as it picks up in almost every situation and it doubles up as a highly rewarding yet risky wake-up attack. Finally, the Force Push is a ranged attack which keeps the opponent in check at most distances. It's a gameplay defining tool because this move is incredibly hard to challenge as a lot of characters. It automatically gives him a strong ranged game, which would actually become his entire game plan over the years. Some key strings and normals would be up 4 as an overhead that keeps them watching their head up close, but forward 4 is a low which can restand the opponent and also keep them mixed up for whatever you do next. 1-2 is a super fast starter that combos into lift, so it's a tidy punish. 3-1, while slower, is better up close and it also combos into lift, so keep an eye on this string when looking to hit confirm. Back 1-2, forward 1 grants major damage and it can be staggered for some block pressure. Do this string off a jump in and Ermac gets insane meterless damage into full screen keeping. A forever cheeky option for Ermac was the charged back 2. Charge it all the way and it's unblockable. but it can be cancelled into buttons as well, so if they flinch, you can catch them with something else. It is a bit gimmicky, and it definitely worked a lot more online thanks to the input delay of old netcode, but offline it could be a bit of a secret weapon when the pressure was on. His X-Ray, like most MK9 X-Rays, was a simple attack that did good damage, but not really something that you'd see or worth using, as meter often gets spent on other things in this game. Ermac was a simple character with strong versions of certain tools. He was a patient player's character, with force push creating huge space and demanding respect at most distances, instant air teleport punishing certain projectiles on top of having decent range of his own, so it made him a bit awkward to fight as certain characters, whereas he can throw projectiles at you but teleport yours. His damage was pretty damn impressive, as a lot of his moves kind of perfectly worked in harmony for combos and conversions. One thing I need to say about Ermac is that he had one of the best anti-air uppercuts, or down twos, in the entire game. It served as a way to get major damage at height, and was really good for anti-airing cross-ups. This move, into slam, into whatever you wanted, made Ermac kinda scary to jump in on with a lot of the cast, because it hurts, and it costs him nothing resource-wise. Another cool thing about this down 2 is that it kinda had shades of Unbreakable from 3D, but in a different way, because if you do a close range lift with punish, and you meaty down 2 underneath them, it technically hits from the other side. So if you're not breaking that direction mid-combo, you get launched, and then the Unbreakable choke finishes for respectable damage. It's a nice little throwback, I think, but really useful, as you might expect. Ermac sat around the mid-tier for MK9. He was an honest character, nothing about him was broken or too overwhelming, but the tools that he did have didn't exactly make him a struggle pick either, because he has range, tools, damage, he has a highly rewarding but risky wake-up game. I always say that Ermac pretty much fits into the category I'd put in Sector or Reptile, where by their own merits they're actually really damn solid, but honest characters that didn't have busted tools of the top tiers didn't quite cut it at the highest level of play. When I think of Ermac players in MK9, I think of two players immediately. The first is Zaf, who you saw all over the North American circuit many years ago and was able to consistently show up in strong form with the character. There's a really good amount of YouTube footage that you can find where he's really showing off how the character was played at a high level. The second Ermac player I'm bringing up today, and a good friend of mine from many years ago, was the Greek Ermac player Metsus. His Ermac was a pioneer in Europe for really showing us all how dangerous the character could be in the right hands if you're a patient player. Everything he did was clean and efficient. If you want to go back and look up top level Ermac players from the game's prime time, look up Zaf and Metsus. They are two absolute must-watch players from back in the day. And finally, we enter the, as of right now, final playable version of Ermac, which is Mortal Kombat X. Now look, this game went through a lot of changes, and so did Ermac alongside it. So the version that I'm going to cover is the latest version. When you load the game up in 2020, or 2021 I guess, because that's tomorrow as I'm recording this, this is the Ermac that you're able to play as right now. Ermac as a base had some neat tools, and he played MKX extremely well. An overhead forward 4 that could combo, and a low back 3 that could combo. Both of these options had safer enders, so that if you were in a point blank position and didn't want to take a massive risk, you could just do the built-in string attached to that button and still get damaged that way. He had meterless launchers in teleport and some already existing strings that started off things like forward 2, so combos weren't exactly a problem for him. And his armored options belonged to the Soul Blast, which was a really nice get-off-me tool. His basic moves all let him play the game in terms of combo potential and mix-up, and his variations changed that game plan depending on what you picked. I may as well cover the variations on their own here because it changes a fair amount across all three, and remember, variations were what MKX was all about. Master of Souls was by far the most popular day one because of this move right here. The projectile will stun the opponent if all 3 souls are surrounding Ermac, and you can detonate it for a launch, or just take the stun and combo into something else. This stun will happen anywhere you hit it, so if you use it at the beginning of a combo, you can cash out into damage, or if you hit them with a different move, the stun can be used to reset the combo and go for another overhead or low mix-up, for example. He had a vanish too, but it was pretty gimmicky. Master of Souls was all about the Soul Ball stun, and it meant that he could pretty much mix you to hell and back. Mystic became the most popular variation by the end because of Soul Push, which only Mystic had access to. This move was not good at all in the early stages of the game, but in the final patch, it is one of the absolute best armored attacks in the entire game. It does good damage, pushes far away, and it drains their resources on hit. At most ranges, it felt almost entirely risk-free, and his availability to use it was constant. Very, very annoying to play against. His second tool was a change of the Soul Lift, where in this variation, it was a meterless stun. If you wanted to play strong defense with a super annoying armored attack, just play Mystic, and people still do, to this day, for good reason. Finally, there's Spectral. Again, a variation that actually wasn't good early, especially once it had its game-breaking bugs removed, but in the final version of MKXL, after getting some balance changes, he is now a corner mix machine. His universal float is replaced by a super version of it that you can combo into. While in this state, you can do new attacks that combo into each other, and your air specials still work in the float as well. So you can combo into the enhanced air blast, which you can still meter burn, you can teleport, or you can do his new move in Spectral, the Soul Charge, which is a really good armored attack. Plenty of highlight reels contain this variation because it is an animal in the corner, and it has some of the filthiest and most stylish mix-up sequences in the entire game. Ermac ended up being considered very strong in MKX, and he still is, very much so. All three variations can work, with Spectral requiring the most time to master, Master of Souls just having that reset potential, and Mystic having this crazy effective armor game. Mystic tends to be the variation of choice these days, and if Ermac gets brought up in tier list discussions, he's always considered very strong in the final patch. His universal overhead low game and 3 different variations working out for him makes him a strong character indeed. I'd even heard in my time people say that Mystic could even be a top 5 variation because of the push. But the thing about MKX is that end game is so insane these days that tons of variations could actually be top 5. It's awesome. Hello, everyone. First of all, sorry about the camera quality. I normally have a much better camera, as I'm sure you know, but Mustard is currently using it for a video, so I've had to go with plan B. Now, that's out of the way, what is this outro? Normally I talk about Ermac and his legacy and how his gameplay has had many different forms across the years, even down to his MK9 Ermac lift belonging to Shang Tsung in MK11, all these small little details, right? And it's all still true, but as of this video being recorded, it is the 1st of January, 2021. We've just entered the new year, and what a year it's been for everyone. You know, it's been a tough year for all of us because of COVID, lockdown, quarantine. I've been in lockdown since March, basically, where I live in the UK. And why am I sitting here and talking to you? Because I want to thank you for watching not only this video, but every video last year. You know, whether you watched one video, maybe you watched them all. Thanks for sticking around, and more importantly, your patience and understanding with me. I haven't had the most regular of upload schedules. That is because I still am a freelance commentator for competitive games. I commentate Mortal Kombat in all of its forms. I commentate Doom Eternal. I commentate Quake Champions. And it means that as a freelancer, sometimes my schedule is quite light and I can grind videos in the downtime. But when my schedule is crazy and I've just got, you know, I've got shows coming out of my ears, my availability definitely takes a bit of a nosedive, and the end of 2020 was definitely the latter. Now that's not a bad thing. As a freelance professional, it's great to be busy, and I'm certainly not complaining for that. I'm very lucky to have been doing what I love doing all year round, but it has meant that my availability to do these large videos, kind of like the one that you've just watched, it's a lot of work that goes into putting them together. You know, those that edit videos, I'm sure you understand. It's the research period across all the games. It's the scripting. It's the voiceover. It's the small details. It's actually getting the gameplay recorded, you know, across all the different games. It's very time consuming, and I want to make sure that I go into as much detail as I can without forgetting anything that's important. You know, the whole point of these videos is to give you a nice educated history lesson on what this kind of franchise brings to the table with all the different characters, and I love to do it. But it does mean that when my schedule gets ridiculous, it's kind of hard to make these videos. But I always try, you know, when I have the free time, which is why now I've been able to push out this Ermac video, and I have plenty left in the pipeline. Aside from that, it's about trying to maintain a work-to-life balance in between shows and videos and everything else. focusing on just taking the time to recharge my batteries. Burnout is real and definitely something you want to avoid. Spending time with my fiance, you know, we live together, and even down to things like fitness, you know, trying to shed some of that lockdown weight, and I'm really enjoying a kind of new diet and fitness plan that I've got, which is going really well. So my point is that all of this kind of adds up into time, and it's time that I really want to go into 2021 refining, being a bit more into a schedule, because I do actually want to put more videos out there as we go into this new year about the stuff that I love. And thank you very much for sticking around, hearing me out, and I do hope that everyone's doing okay with the current world situation. May 2021 be better and kinder for all of us. Take care and stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Much love and take care. Peace out.